which brought out a safety car, allowing for a controversial decision to be made where race control allowed lap cars to be passed, leading to Max chasing down Lewis with much faster, fresher tires. Then Max overtakes Lewis while having leg cramps, which gave us Toto Wolff's iconic radio message,
Hey, Mikey, no, Mikey, that was so not right.
Complaining to race director Michael Massey, who then got death threats for making Lewis lose the championship, so that next year he was fired and moved to Australia, potentially getting an Uber from Valtteri Bottas.
Playing on iPhone? Now you can play Unlocked on PC with Google Play Games. Unlock bigger screens and better controls for even sweeter battles. Go play on PC with Google Play Games.
Please tell me you guys learned something from that. But the final meme on this tier is Drive to Survive, which gave us so much material. One being Toto Wolff, where in the team principal meeting he had an argument with Christian Horner regarding the problem of porpoising in F1 cars, which led him to say this.
Change your car. You've got a problem. Change your fucking car.
Then you change your car, because Checo has been saying the car is fucked. Checo has been on the record and is in the
Okay, let's go and get them.
Yeah. I have it. I have it printed out.
Now, I have no idea what Toto was thinking when he said that, but we can assume he might just have an actual piece of paper that just says, "Hi, this is Checo, the car is fucked." But tier 5. This final tier involves things we truly do not know and requires exceptional wheel knowledge. As favorable as it is to start this tier with a lighthearted tone, it simply cannot be done. This tier is where the deep-rooted social issues that I mentioned earlier start to plague memes in Formula 1, beginning with none other than Jos Verstappen, the only man who can beat Max. Literally. Oftentimes you'll see people in the F1 community joke about how Jos beats Max, a reference to how hard his dad was during his upbringing. Jos Verstappen wanted to mold Max into a racing machine, pushing him in ways many consider to be abuse, leaving Max at a gas station when he was 14, forcing him to endure freezing temperatures while practicing karting, hitting him on the helmet, verbally abusing him almost every single time, and treating Max like a science project, leading fans to also make jokes like the Jos Verstappen project, basically where you're gonna put your child through hell to become the next world champion. Ayrton Senna dated a 15-year-old. I am not making this up. Ever seen those memes that go like this? That's a reference to the time Ayrton Senna, a legendary F1 driver, dated 15-year-old Adriana Yaman while he was 25. And yes, I know, what the fuck? For context, the age of consent in Brazil is so much lower compared to other countries, 14. If Ayrton did that anywhere else, this would be a completely different story. As much as he played by the rules, many still go, well, yeah, what the fuck? The two were also briefly engaged, but the relationship was broken off by Senna in late 1988. Now, I'm assuming many of you guys are surprised to hear this about Ayrton Senna, but to be fair, it was pretty obvious from the start, because like Ayrton said, at one point in his career, if you don't go for a gap, okay, I can't make this joke. I can't make this joke. F1 sponsors can also become a meme, as they can sometimes be the biggest hit or the biggest fucking miss in history. Visa Cash App RB, an abomination of a name, and Ferrari's HP sponsor, where it looks like Smurfs took a fat shit on the car. Oh, and Max Verstappen has another driver's child. This refers to Penelope and Max, where we get to see them both bond on Max's sim racing streams. Now, P is actually not Max Verstappen's own daughter. She's Danny Kvyat's child, a former F1 driver who is dating Kelly Piquet, who is also the child of another former F1 driver, Nelson Piquet, and is now dating Max, who is also the child of a former F1 driver, Jos Verstappen. Are you still with me? Danny Kvyat and Kelly Piquet broke up in 2019, the same year Penelope was born, and 3 years prior, Max Verstappen replaces Kvyat at Red Bull, then got together with Kelly a year after, when he was 19, and she was 28 years old. Bro is a victim in every way possible. But this led to memes saying that Max didn't just steal Danny Kvyat's girlfriend, but his daughter and his entire F1 career. Now, with all of those tiers being said, F1 memes are truly beautiful. I even forgot that this video was about F1 memes in the first place. We've got a whole ass library of memes that it's been such a challenge for me to try and include everything in one video, so forgive me for ones I have missed. I even missed out on putting Red Bull team principal Christian Horner sending a picture of his corn dog to a female employee, giving him the nickname Christian Horny, Valtteri It's James, and a legendary legendary Dutch commentator that gave us this wonderful clip.
19. Oh nee, hij is hem kwijt, maar hij houdt hem. Holy shit. Oh, ik ga eens doen wat hij mag. Fuck that shit.
Ultimately, everyone has their own favorite memes in F1. I, for one, like whatever is on El Padre's TikTok, but the meme that truly takes the spotlight for me is Charles Leclerc. He started F1 in 2018 and has stayed till now in 2024. And while many say that Charles has stayed relatively the same over the years, a hungry talent looking for a championship victory, there's actually one major difference Charles carried over the years. So what separates this guy from this guy? Well, this one has a soul.
Going into 2025, Ferrari decided to go with a brand new concept for the season instead of carrying over more of their 2024 car. Frederic Vasseur characterized the SF25 as a 99% new car carrying over less than 1% of the parts from the SF24. As for the motivation behind the changes, Ferrari said, "The thinking behind this change in architecture was to clean up the airflow around the car while also giving greater scope for further aero development, which had pretty much been extinguished with the previous iteration." And now, there is no doubt that this was a risky strategy, especially when you consider how good the SF24 was at the end of last season. Although Lando was Max's biggest threat for the title last year, let's not forget that Leclerc finished closer to Lando in the championship than Lando did to Max, and after the summer break, Ferrari, with both of its drivers, won in Monza, had back-to-back wins in Austin and Mexico, with one of them being a 1-2, and almost won the Constructors' Championship ahead of McLaren, losing out by just 14 points in Abu Dhabi. Expectations for Ferrari were understandably high coming into this season because Red Bull looked to be in decline. They had just added Lewis Hamilton to create arguably the best driver lineup on the grid, and given how strong the Ferrari looked relative to the McLaren at the end of 2024, a lot of people were backing Leclerc to potentially win the title, presuming Ferrari could just continue on their upward trajectory. For 2025, Ferrari completely redeveloped the front of their car with a brand new front suspension setup in search of more development potential. They decided to switch to pull rod suspension, which gives the car a lower center of gravity, as well as allowing for better conditioning of airflow from the front wing. The difficulty with it, however, is that if the suspension and aero platform are not working in unison, it can make the car a lot harder to set up during the weekend, creating a narrower setup window. On top of that, the team also repackaged their car, moving the cockpit, engine and fuel tank more rearwards. This was a risk that Ferrari felt was necessary to challenge for the title if they would be able to control the negative effects. Redesigning the mechanical platform and how the air is conditioned from the front wing might have provided more scope for development, but it was always going to come at the risk of potentially taking some time to understand and unlock the potential that was seen in the wind tunnel.
The card that's preferred professional or just love getting hands-on with your home projects, Harbor Freight offers quality hand tools built to last, backed by a lifetime guarantee. And the best part? Prices that simply can't be beat. From wrenches, to pliers, to ratchets.
Everyone in 2025 has been blown away by the McLaren, but even relative to the Red Bull and Mercedes, the SF25 has still been a massive disappointment. Although Ferrari potentially have race-winning performance, the SF25, like most cars, needs to be run very low to the ground to access that performance, but the issue has been keeping it there. At high speeds, either down the end of a straight or on tracks with bumpy, medium and high-speed corners, the team has been unable to control the platform to make the car consistent and to keep it in the right dynamic window, which would allow it to be fast enough through a variety of corner speeds. Being unable to control the platform when the car is producing the most amount of downforce has also had the added consequences of too much plank wear. This is something that hit Ferrari right at the start of the season with a double disqualification in China when both Leclerc and Hamilton were found to have excessive plank wear. This was a clear indication that Ferrari didn't have a compliant platform or a comprehensive understanding of how to set their car up, and ever since then, Ferrari's season has been all about managing and containing the issue. Throughout the season, Ferrari has been very reluctant to raise their car too high off the ground, as it would take it out of its operating window and sacrifice too much performance, especially in qualifying. Given how condensed the grid has been in 2025, evident by the fact that both of the drivers have been knocked out in Q2, Ferrari has had to risk running their car as low to the ground as possible, which in turn has put them in danger for the races. To manage the issue, Ferrari has had to slow its cars down in the races when the downforce is at its highest, with tactics like raising the tyre pressures, changing the engine maps to reduce their top speed, constantly telling Hamilton and Leclerc to do lift and coast to reduce their speed down the straights, and to also avoid driving over bumps. During the final year of a regulation cycle, if you want to seriously contend for the title, then being able to win a Grand Prix in the first 4 or 5 races is a must. If you have a race-winning car to start the season, similar to Red Bull in 2021, who threw everything to help Max win his first title, then you can at least justify developing it all the way to the end of the year to give your driver the best chance at winning the title, even if it means that you're diverting some of your resources away from nailing the new generation of car the following year. Within a couple of races into 2025, it was very obvious that Ferrari's decision to go with a brand new concept had backfired, and that their season was essentially already going to be a failure, because the gap to McLaren was so big, so fast, in terms of performance and points, that they were never going to develop fast enough to catch, let alone overhaul the McLaren drivers in time to become title contenders. In the end, Ferrari's development strategy this season has kind of reflected their depressing reality. Instead of being able to develop the aerodynamic performance to be able to compete with McLaren, they have had to spend the entire season troubleshooting their car with upgrades to simply improve the platform. In Spa, the team introduced a revised rear suspension which was specifically aimed to help alleviate their ride height issues. The problem is that unlike at McLaren, where over the past few years we have seen upgrade packages provide instant performance, both of the drivers said the changes felt very minimal and that it was still going to take some time to understand and fine-tune the car to get it into a comfortable window. In Hungary, it was very obvious that the team tried to bite off more than it could chew by pushing the ride height of their car to its limits, thinking that they had solved their problem. Although this allowed Leclerc to qualify on pole, the race once again they suffered from excessive plank wear, forcing them to make tyre pressure changes during the pit stop, which then made the car undrivable, in the words of Leclerc. Something that I have said consistently throughout 2025 is that if you look at where Ferrari are in the Constructors' Championship, they are being flattered so much and are being made to look better than they actually are. For all of the talk about Lewis's struggles, generally the drivers have actually got a similar level of performance out of the car, especially in the races. The only reason why Ferrari have scored as many points as they have is because for differing reasons, the second drivers at Mercedes and Red Bull have underdelivered relative to the drivers that those teams had last season. And in an alternative universe where Red Bull kept Checo and Lewis stayed at Mercedes for 25, I think Ferrari would be exactly where they deserve to be, which is behind all of those teams in 4th place. I think that context is very important because on one hand, it's a credit to Fred for signing the 2 absolute best drivers they possibly could, which is why they have scored as many points as they have. But on the other hand, in terms of the team itself, when they do go on to finish second only behind the McLaren team, despite not having won a single race so far this season, it will be a totally false reflection of just how bad their season and their car has actually been. Regardless of how many podiums or even wins Ferrari gets during the rest of 2025, with drivers like Leclerc and Hamilton in your team, fighting for the title is the only goal, with anything less than that being a total failure. Ferrari took a gamble for all of the right reasons, to really go for it in the final year of these regs, and to search for performance in areas that were untapped. However, their gamble was one that didn't pay off. They didn't have a comprehensive enough understanding of their mechanical platform, and their revised suspension setup has sent the team into a tailspin since the beginning of 2025. Looking ahead, however, whilst Ferrari have developed their car more this season compared to most teams, the upgrades that they have brought have mostly been mechanical rather than aero, because that is the parts that will be relevant and will carry over into 2026. It's clear that this season for Ferrari has turned into a development season to understand and experiment with their new suspension setup, so that even when it comes to creating a platform for the 2026 car, they will now have a year's worth of experience with this suspension configuration. Even in failure, there is always lessons to learn, there is always experiences to be gained, and if Ferrari are able to nail the 26 regs and build a car that can at least give their drivers a chance of fighting for the title from the very beginning of the season, then maybe the failure of 2025 will be worth it after all. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe, that would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the
Behind this advisor is the power of Vanguard's institutional quality bond funds, 90% of which have outperformed their peers over the last 10 years. Are you backed by institutional quality bond funds? Vanguard.
This message is brought to you by lobbyists with special interests.
Beyond wants you to believe that plants are good to eat, but they're
Charles Leclerc previously held the longest contract on the grid, as he was committed to the Scuderia until 2029. Ironically, in the run-up to Monaco, after having what he described as the worst weekend of his career in Canada, he then announced a further contract extension with Ferrari, and even though we don't know the exact length of Leclerc's new deal, we can say that it will keep him with Ferrari well into the 2030s. And now, on one hand, many people will say, why not? Ferrari have just started to gain some momentum after Hamilton's win, and although it's coincided with a very rough patch for Leclerc, he is still in the most desirable seat on the grid. However, just as in life, there is exactly zero guarantees in Formula 1 that they'll be able to sustain this recent performance over the course of the season, or even over the following years like McLaren were. And so whilst the magic of Ferrari clearly hasn't disillusioned Leclerc yet, we have to accept the possibility that in choosing to stay with Ferrari indefinitely, Leclerc could go his entire career without winning a title. I think what's strange to me about this deal is that Leclerc chose to extend it in the first place. The one thing that I have seen a lot of people say in defense of this extension is that there simply isn't any better alternatives for him to go to anywhere else. Now, yes, whilst there aren't any openly available seats in more competitive teams available for 2027 or 2028, that is not the case for 2030, when this extension is meant to start. And no one knows who is going to be competitive that far down the road, and in a way, after all of the loyalty that Leclerc has continued to show Ferrari, I am surprised that he didn't choose to put some pressure on them by choosing to be a factor in the 2030 driver market. And now some people would argue that that would be counterproductive, because it's not as if the people at the factory are going to work harder tomorrow because Leclerc has agreed to still be there in 5 years' time. do think that given that this team has under-delivered for decades now, putting a little bit of pressure and keeping the management accountable might not be a bad thing. Let's not forget that towards the end of last year, John Elkann was more than happy to throw his drivers under the bus, including Charles Leclerc, acting as if they were the problem when yet again Ferrari failed to produce a race-winning car. Ferrari has made a strong start to 2026. Their recent Spain updates allowed Lewis Hamilton to win their first race of the season, and as a team they currently sit second in the Constructors' Championship, in large part due to the power unit reliability and also the consistency of Lewis and Charles. Now, there is no getting away from the irony of making this video now, just as Ferrari seem to be on top of the world, which is in complete contrast to Leclerc, who has had a nightmare run of races. Unlike with Lewis, where there was a clear technical explanation for why he was clicking so much better with the 2026 Ferrari compared to the 2025 ground effect Ferrari, with Leclerc this sudden loss of performance and confidence has been a lot more mysterious. Despite crashing late on in Miami, Leclerc was still on fire there when Ferrari brought their first upgrade package of the season. He finished on the podium in the sprint, and then in the race he led the opening stint and fought for the win against Antonelli and the two McLarens. Canada, however, is where everything started to go wrong. Now, again, Leclerc has been quite cagey to not give too many details as to what exactly he's been struggling with outside of the brakes. But in Canada, he did reveal that it was primarily to do with not being able to switch on the tyres. I have zero feeling with the tyres from the first lap of FP1 until the very last lap of the race. And in the last 15 laps, I was driving a second and a half off the pace, just not to take the risk. Montreal is a track where historically, I have not been particularly strong. A bit like Melbourne. I just struggle with my driving style, and without going into too much detail, the rhythm of the corner with my driving style doesn't fit well. If you put on top of that the issues we've had with the brakes on Friday and the tyres on Saturday, it is not like I was in a much worse place than Lewis, but I just had zero feeling and I couldn't get the rhythm. Canada and Monaco are tracks with lots of chicanes, short, sharp corners where it isn't that easy to turn on your tyres if your driving style isn't conducive to energizing the tyres. Barcelona, however, is the exact opposite. There is loads of high-speed, high-load corners where the downforce can energize the tyres, with the problem in Barcelona being high degradation if you start sliding. Although the weekend from the outside for Leclerc was a disaster, with a crashing Q3 and a late race retirement due to hydraulic failure, he did say after his quali crash that his feeling with the car was actually great, and he also ended Q2 second in the timings, only behind George Russell, showing that he was well in the fight for pole position. The problem, however, are these crashes. 4 or 5 years ago, Leclerc was a crash-prone driver, but after 2023, he started to shake off that reputation. What we are seeing now is him starting to slip back into that reputation, and that is very dangerous because it only makes it even more difficult to rebuild your confidence. Whilst people can debate how much Leclerc was at fault for the crash in Monaco, the late crash in Miami along with the quali crash in Barcelona were just needless errors on his part. The one in Barcelona, he openly admitted that he was just pushing too much, taking too much risk going into the corner, which put him on a wider line where there was a lot more dust, and then also asking too much of the car too soon on the throttle on the exit.
Introducing the GMC Canyon AT4X. During GMC Truck Month, current non-GM owners get 3.9% APR plus $3,000 purchase cash on 2026 GMC Canyon models.
You know how you're always saying, I need to plan ahead in life? Well, I've got a plan for our future. Step 1, I transfer to your university in Manila. I'm not
We also can't discount the effect that Lewis Hamilton's resurgence is having on Leclerc psychologically as well. It's already caused him to switch braking components going entirely towards Lewis's configuration of using carbon industry, and I'm sure there are lots of other little areas where Leclerc is comparing himself and his car to Lewis, and potentially doubting himself right now. When everything seems to be going against you, and when you're trying to overcompensate by trying to access performance that simply isn't there, it can be very easy to get into a negative spiral, especially when you then see your teammates succeed, and see everyone's emotions inside of the team be so different to yours. This entire situation brings me back to the contract extension, which, again, I just find strange because why would you you want to extend with Ferrari for so long when, apart from the last race in Barcelona, there is still very little evidence to say that they'll give you a chance to challenge for the title over the next 6 or 7 years? Even Michael Schumacher, at the height of his Ferrari dominance, was only signing 3-year extensions at most, with his final deal, which ran until 2006, only being a 2-year deal. With Leclerc, we know that winning for Ferrari holds enormous emotional weight that goes back to his godfather Jules Bianchi being a part of their academy, and then also from his decade-long relationship with Ferrari as well. What is also clear is that in the social media age, where a driver's individual brand is so intertwined with the team that they race for, it's clear that for Leclerc, he also puts a lot of value in wanting to remain a part of the Ferrari brand for as long as possible, because no other team on the grid will boost his social presence more than Ferrari. I just hope that if we get 2 or 3 years down the line when this new deal kicks in, and if Ferrari are still not title contenders, that Leclerc doesn't overvalue staying with Ferrari and what it does for him commercially and socially over wanting to chase to get into a more competitive car so that he can improve his racing legacy. The fact is that we have never seen a driver actively sign long-term contracts for a team that's been under-delivering and that's been incapable of winning titles for over 20 years, and it's actually counterintuitive to how motorsport works. F1 is not football. At the end of your career, you don't get brownie points for loyalty if you subsequently fail to win a title together. The best drivers have always chased the best cars, and they have always dictated the driver market. Schumacher, Alonso, and Hamilton all won titles for Benetton, Renault, and McLaren before then forcing their way into Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes, because those teams, in their eyes, had more long-term potential to allow them to win more titles. Ayrton Senna, who won 3 titles, and to this day is the iconic McLaren driver, the second they started losing, he immediately wanted to jump ship to join the dominant Williams team, first for 1993 and then for 1994, because like all of the great drivers, he dictated the driver market, and he wanted to chase the best car to have the most success. Leclerc, during his Monaco press conference, said that he enjoyed winning with Ferrari as one of the reasons why he decided to stay. But the fact is, he hasn't been winning with Ferrari. During his 7 full seasons there, Leclerc has had more winless seasons than he has had winning ones. When you look at Leclerc's stats at Ferrari, they are wholly disproportionate to the level of talent that he is. In 7 years, he has had 52 podiums, 27 pole positions, but just 8 wins. That is it. That is all he has to show after racing for the most successful team in Formula 1 history. I believe, and I have said for years now, that behind Max, Leclerc to me is the second best driver in F1 since at least 2024. I am sure that Leclerc believes that he is way better than drivers like Norris, Russell, Piastri, and Antonelli, and yet he has had to watch lesser drivers be given better opportunities and go on to achieve more success than he has had. To me, when seats at Mercedes, Red Bull, and McLaren become available in 2 or 3 years' time, Leclerc, like all great drivers, should be in the mix. He should be there to dictate the driver market, to keep pressure on his own team, and to potentially go to one of those teams if they are in a stronger position to give him a better car than Ferrari has given him over the past what would be at that point decade of being with the team. Leclerc has all of the talent in the world to become a world champion, and I get that before he has won a title for Ferrari, he doesn't even want to comprehend the possibility of leaving them. But I just hope that his indefinite loyalty, whilst admirable, doesn't come at the cost of him never winning an F1 title, and doesn't come at the cost of him missing out on cars that would have given him a better opportunity to do so. And not only will it be his own fault for not chasing better options, but he is also so good and so talented that if it were to happen, I think we could be looking at the greatest ever driver to never win a Formula 1 World Championship. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one. already be one of the greatest drivers the sport has ever seen. He is currently on his way to a 4th consecutive World Championship. He has set and broken more records than I can remember, and as a driver, whether you love him or hate him, he has been the benchmark for all of the drivers over the past few years. Even though this season isn't done yet and Lando is still mathematically within a chance of winning the title, to me there has been no doubt over who has been the best driver. I think 2024 has been probably Max's best season in Formula 1, and whilst he has had more dominant championships in the past, personally I've always valued championships that were won during competitive seasons more than dominant ones, because when car performance is close, that is when the best drivers make the biggest difference in terms of their ability to perform consistently under the highest levels of pressure. This season, which I consider to be Max's most complete title-winning season so far, has come in his 10th year in Formula 1, and when comparing him to the other two legends of the era in Lewis and Fernando, I think that their best seasons also came around that time as well. Lewis's best season to me was in 2018 in his 12th year of Formula 1, particularly for the way in which he dominated Seb mentally and forced him into making mistakes. And Fernando's best season was in 2012, which was in his 11th season in Formula 1, for the way in which he was able to consistently pick up the points and turn an underperforming Ferrari into a title challenger. That period to me is the apex of these drivers' careers, because at that point, they still had all of the raw talent and motivation that made them such exciting talents in the first place, but they also now had plenty of race and championship winning experience across multiple regulation changes. When Max made his F1 debut at just 17 years old, I think it's easy to forget just how controversial that was. Now, his rookie season is a story in itself, which I've already done a video on, and which has actually recently surpassed 1 million views. Now, firstly, I'd like to say a massive thank you to everyone that's watched that video, and secondly, if you do want an in-depth dive into 2015 specifically, then definitely go and check that video out in the link below. What surprised everyone about Max almost immediately is that he looked totally comfortable as a Formula 1 driver despite his age. And that was obvious in the fact that had it not been for reliability issues, he would have scored points in his first ever Formula 1 race, and then did so anyway in his second race in Malaysia. One thing about Max that I'm not going to mention too much throughout this video, because it kind of goes without saying, is his immense raw talent and exceptional car control. Like with all great champions, those things are a given. In the time that Max has been in Formula 1, he's not necessarily got more talented or even faster, so to speak, because as we saw when he first got into the Red Bull at just 18 years old, he was immediately able to be a race winner. It's more so that over time he's learned to refine his speed and also improve his execution under pressure. Christian Horner, speaking in 2023, summed it up very well, saying, "He arrived in Formula 1 as quite a rough diamond. He is now a very polished diamond. He has maintained all of his raw attributes, but now brings experience to couple with that." In his early years at Toro Rosso and Red Bull, what stood out is that he was able to find the limits of the car incredibly quickly. Countless people who have worked with him, including Ricciardo himself, have all described how they were very surprised by how hard he would push right from the start of FP1, instead of choosing to build up throughout the weekend. That's actually a trait that he has carried throughout his career, even now being one of the earliest to set a really fast lap time in FP1, and it showed that he had a huge amount of confidence and self-belief to be comfortable enough to push very hard, very fast. Having said that, although he was able to produce incredible peaks, he was also involved in a lot of controversy when it came to his driving. More than any other driver that I have seen, Max in wheel-to-wheel combat pushed the FIA and the rules to their absolute limit. Moving under braking, late direction changes, and forcing drivers off the track all became big talking points. And in fact, after battling with Ricciardo for the win at the 2016 Malaysian Grand Prix, he admitted that had it not been his teammate, he would have pushed Ricciardo off the track. And now, no one was questioning his talent, but fans, and especially the other drivers who experienced it firsthand, were critical of him and of the FIA for allowing him to race the way that he did. After major incidents, there was almost always a clarification of the rules by the FIA that was related in some way to Max's driving, and there was a prevailing narrative that Max was essentially being protected by the FIA. This battle between Max, the FIA, and his fellow drivers sent out loads of mixed messages because after his controversial battle with Raikkonen at Spa in 2016, although the FIA chose not to penalise Max, they did then feel the need to have a one-on-one talk with him about his driving, which again just sends loads of mixed messages about what's actually right and wrong. Horner described this interaction as, Charlie was keen to show him a video of Spa. It was a gentle warning. Like any 18-year-old, the criticism from the other drivers seems to be going in one ear and out the other. He really doesn't care. We are all here talking about it, and it's that spirit that he's got that is bringing fans trackside. That last point, however, was actually the most everlasting. Max, more than any other driver, totally flipped the question of racing ethics, and whether you want to call it confidence, arrogance, or a mixture of both, he didn't care about anyone's opinion because as long as he wasn't getting penalised, then in his mind, he wasn't doing anything wrong. Now, in truth, that was a totally justifiable mindset to have because it's the job of the other drivers to adapt to the rules, but it's also what made him such a polarising driver. Whilst there were lots of fans who were critical of his driving, others absolutely loved it. He was entertaining, totally self-assured, and all of those things, along with his killer instinct, garnered him a huge amount of fans all around the world to go along with his already infamous Orange Army of Dutch fans. This was still a period of growth, however, for Max, because it was also around this time when he started to develop a reputation for crashing, which earned him the nickname Crash Stappen. And now, in truth, it wasn't necessarily that he was crashing all the time and that he was some kind of reckless liability. It was just that the incidents that he was having all had massive consequences. Even though this era was dominated by Mercedes, with Ferrari also challenging for the title, the Red Bull was still capable of winning races on tracks like Monaco and Mexico, where due to either the layout or the altitude, the deficit of the Renault power unit was diminished. However, even though Max was scoring podiums and was already one of the best drivers on the grid, his overconfidence meant that he wasn't maximising the car at his disposal. In Monaco 2016, he crashed on a weekend where the car was capable of winning. In Hungary 2017, he crashed into his teammate Ricciardo, taking him out of the race. Then in Baku 2018, he again collided with Ricciardo after what Daniel felt was a double move, and he also crashed in Monaco again in 2018, with Ricciardo going on to win that race. This reputation for crashing really reached its peak at the start of the 2018 season, with Max famously having 6 different crashes or spins in the first 6 races. The narrative at the time was that it was clear that Max was immensely fast and his potential was undoubtedly that of a world champion, but he just couldn't put it all together under pressure in key moments and on tracks that really mattered in the same way as Ricciardo could. I think the biggest manifestation of this was in his qualifying, when he won the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix on his Red Bull debut, becoming the youngest driver ever to win a race at just 18 years old. Given that he had 3 years to become the youngest pole sitter, I think people thought that it was almost a given that he would eventually score a pole position in that time and take that record away from Seb as well. But he didn't. There was a bit of a dichotomy in the fact that during their time as teammates, there is no doubt that Max was the faster and better qualifier, beating Daniel in their quali head-to-head, but when it came to pole positions, it was always Ricciardo who delivered in crunch moments when the car was competitive, scoring 3 poles to 0. Having said that, although those mistakes are part of Max's legacy, as Niki Lauda once said, you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes, and for a man that went from karting to single-seaters and then to Formula 1 all within the space of less than 3 years, he needed to make those mistakes to become the driver he is today. Or whether Max will ever admit this, possibly in the future after he retires from Formula 1, the weekend of Monaco 2018, I think will go down as the inflection point of his career. This was the weekend in which, after crashing in practice and subsequently not being able to participate in qualifying, he had to bear the criticism about his driving, all the while watching his teammates claim pole position and then also go on to win the race. Something changed in Max that weekend because from that race onwards, even though Ricciardo had some of the worst reliability you will ever see in the modern era, Ricciardo never beat Max again after winning in Monaco. From the start of 2018 to the end of 2019, Max became a completely different driver. Ricciardo leaving the team actually turned out to be one of the most significant moments in Max's career, because one of the reasons that Ricciardo left is because he already started to feel the team, and specifically Horner and Marko, gravitate towards Max. It was inevitable that Max was going to become the future at Red Bull, because the power dynamic that him and his dad had created inside of the team, along with his exceptional talent, basically meant that they had almost more power than Horner and Marko. None of that would have happened had Max not shown the immense potential that he did on the track, and with Ricciardo gone for 2019, for the first time in his life, Max became the outright leader of the team. This change of dynamic empowered Max with even more confidence, and he also refined his driving by learning to judge where the limit is a lot better, both in terms of his wheel-to-wheel combat and also in terms of execution in qualifying and the race. After Monaco 2018, not only did he go on to win the Austrian Grand Prix to kickstart his season, but he also went on a career-defining run. In the 21-race span between the 2018 Belgium Grand Prix and the 2019 Hungarian Grand Prix, he finished inside of the top 5 in every single race. Just think about that for a minute. 21 races, which at the time was basically the length of an entire season, and although he had imperious reliability, he managed to score 12 podiums and 3 wins in a car which on average was only the 3rd best on the grid. I have always said that 2019 was the season in which Max reached his absolute prime. From there, he became, in my mind, a driver capable of winning the World Championship, and it was now just a case of giving him the car to match his talent. In 2019, he beat both of the Ferrari drivers despite driving a definitely inferior car, and in 2020, he finished just 9 points behind Valtteri in one of the most dominant cars of all time. He started to find that balance of still pushing the rules and still being aggressive with the other drivers, but he was now able to tame his aggression a little bit more, knowing when to concede, which made him a more consistent and more complete driver overall. After winning the title in 2021, despite the controversial way in which the FIA let things play out, there is no denying that Max was a worthy world champion. You could see just by his celebrations that it lifted a huge amount of pressure and expectation off his shoulders, and it allowed him to become even more self-assured because now he had a championship to back up his talent. Max has now reached the upper limit of his development curve. That is why over the past few years, I wouldn't say necessarily that we have seen him get any better. It's more so that now his challenge is to maintain those sky-high standards that he has set, both within himself and also making sure that the team is accountable for them as well. That's not to say that he has been flawless the entire time and still doesn't occasionally get things wrong. Max is very stubborn in wheel-to-wheel combat, and if you look at the back half of 21 and even at times this season when he has been put under pressure, he does sometimes have the tendency to lose his head and become a bit erratic, which is ironic given that the majority of the time he is easily one of the best racers on the grid. The fact is, when you compare him to the other all-time great drivers of the same caliber, none of them have ever had as many crashes or incidents with the other top drivers of their era. Raikkonen, Vettel, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Hamilton, Russell, and now Norris. I am not saying that every single incident that he's ever had with these drivers drivers has always been his fault. But I do think that it's naive to think that it's just a coincidence that Max has had crashes with all of these drivers. And now, none of this is to say that I think Max will, or even should, change the way that he drives. That aggression has got him to where he is today. It makes him the champion that he is today. And I think for him, he will always take that trade-off because it's just a case of sometimes you're going to get the rough with the smooth. His driving is intrinsic to his personality, which is that of a man who's unapologetic, unfiltered, and totally authentic with who he is. It's one of the many reasons why Dutch fans in particular have always liked Max so much, because he represents the people that support him. What I like about Max is that whether you like him or not, what you see is what you get. He says what he means, and he means what he says. Horner and Marco in particular have tried to create an environment that totally supports him. And whilst sometimes I think that that's meant that there's not enough people there to hold him accountable and also to challenge him both in and out of the car because Horner and Marco have made it that way, the reason that they have done that is because they know as long as they center the team around Max and give him a competitive car which suits his style, it basically guarantees championships. When you look at the three great drivers of the current era that have all won championships in Fernando, Lewis, and Max, I think people try so hard to put them all in a box and to try to relate them to one another, when in reality, they are all completely different. Longevity, driving style, motivation, character, they are all very different from one another, and that's what makes their individual journeys as drivers special in their own way. Max's journey and the way he's developed into the driver that he is today has been a great example of someone getting the most out of their talent by embracing the person that they are from day one. His achievements are already historic, and whilst he doesn't have the same drive and motivation to be in Formula 1 as long as Lewis and Fernando, it's scary to think where his legacy is going to be by the time that he finally decides to hang up his helmet. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.
Introducing a revolutionary experience for developers. A great sleep score. Azure DevOps and Defender for Cloud catch security issues, so you can catch more Z's.
Cart takes a quarter?
It's a rental. Aldi doesn't pay for cart wranglers, so the savings go straight to you.
A user named Paper Airplane logged on Hypixel to unwind after a long day. But little did he know that things were about to go very, very wrong. playing some games on the server, he got a message from an unknown person stating that he'd accidentally bought a $50 gift card to the Lunar Client store and was feeling a little generous. Naturally, Paper asked the person for a lunar cosmetic because
who wouldn't want free stuff?
they added each other on Discord. Paper eventually found a cosmetic he wanted, and as this random person was buying it for him, he asked for his email. A bit of a random request, but carelessly, he shared it with him. Shortly after, and as Paper tabbed back in to claim his cosmetic, he noticed that he had been disconnected from hypixel. Perhaps it was just a coincidence. Maybe he just got kicked for being AFK or something. But as he tried to log back in again, the same thing happened. He returned to Discord and noticed that the person who was supposed to be buying him a cosmetic had blocked him. Out of desperation, Paper Airplane tried to log back onto hypixel one more time. However, this time, the disconnect message was different. Someone had logged in from another location. After having what seemed to be only a simple conversation, Paper Airplane mysteriously lost access to their Minecraft account. Turns out, he wouldn't be the only one. In the fall of 2022, the same time that Paper got his account hacked, dozens of reports started showing up of other people having their Minecraft accounts stolen in a similar way. YouTubers began to make videos discussing the problem in hopes that it'll prevent people from falling for it in the future. However, in reality, they wouldn't even make a dent. Hundreds of Minecraft accounts were still being stolen every day. And rightfully so, the community began to ask a few questions. How do these scams work so well? Who's behind all of it? And why are they doing this? At this point, I began to take a closer look at the situation, and after sifting through countless forum posts, I was interested to find out that there wasn't just one main scam going around, but rather several variations of it. Some scammers would promise the victim a free lunar cosmetic, while others would offer a free hypixel rank upgrade. Some would try and lure the victim in by simply pretending to be generous, while others would do something more elaborate, like challenge the user to a duel, promising to give them a prize if they win. All of them do share one thing in common, though. At their core, they're a phishing scam, with the scammer pretending to be a legitimate source, and then using social engineering tactics to trick the victim into sharing sensitive info. Some scammers will even take things a step further by creating fake websites to trick their victims. They'll do this by making a party and then taking the user to their hypixel house. From there, they'll exploit the housing's custom command feature to generate a very suspicious looking message. One that legitimately looks like it could be from hypixel. Normally, links aren't allowed in hypixel chat in order to prevent things like self-promotion from happening. If a player tried to send one through the chat, they would likely be instantly muted or maybe even banned. However, since hypixel can't ban a command block, it bypasses the filter completely. Things get even worse when you actually click on the link and are taken to an extremely similar version of the hypixel store, with only subtle differences that the average player would never notice. In order to quote-unquote claim your gift, the fake hypixel store will ask you for two things: your email and your login code for your Microsoft account. Once the victim enters those credentials, they'll be sent straight to the scammer, and before you know it, your Minecraft account is never to be seen again. What makes these scams so effective is that they take advantage of one of the youngest and most gullible player bases out of any game. Sure, the hypixel community is made up of YouTubers and players of all ages, but a good chunk of hypixel's active players are younger kids. Kids that may not know to be careful who they give their information to, and could potentially enter it in a random website because they think they're going to win a free rank. So far, we've been able to find out exactly how these scams work and why they work so well. But one major question still remains a mystery. Who is responsible for all of these scams? And this is where things get interesting. I started off by sifting through all of the different screenshots from other people's scams that I collected while editing this video, and looking up the different usernames of the people who were scamming on things like NameMC. All I needed was someone on the inside who could answer my questions. But whoever these people were, it was clear they didn't really want to be found. Everyone I had searched had either had their profiles set to private or changed their names so often that they were unrecognizable. I then watched every video uploaded to YouTube about these scams, hoping that maybe one of these YouTubers had somehow managed to gather some information on these guys. However, it seemed like they were as clueless as I was. Hours of research went by, and despite all of my efforts, I still had absolutely no clue who ran these scams. After everything else had failed me, I went to my final potential source of information, which was guys. I sent a message to everyone in my Discord server asking if they had any knowledge of the person behind these scams. And what do you know, not even 10 minutes went by before I received a DM that would change everything. The person who messaged me not only knew someone who was behind these scams, but he even offered me to set up an interview with them. I honestly couldn't believe my luck, and as I read through the message, something stood out to me. The person who reached out to me mentioned he knew one of the people who ran it. Was there more than one person involved in these scams? I quickly agreed and was added to a group chat containing me, my viewer, and someone named Jesse. We said hi, set up a time, and at 2:30 p.m. the next day, I would finally get the answers I'd been searching for.
Introducing a revolutionary experience for developers. A great sleep score. Azure DevOps and Defender for Cloud catch security issues, so you can catch more Z's.
It was finally time. I started off the interview by getting to know him a little bit. Okay, so firstly, I've been told that you are the person that runs the Lunar Cosmetic and like hypixel rank scams. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've got the fake winner and the fake hypixel.
Okay. So is it just you that's running this, or do you have like a specific group of people that kind of like all work together?
Well, there's multiple people doing them. When I was doing it, it was just me and one other person, but there's a lot of people doing it now. There used to be not many. Now there's probably 50 people doing it.
Oh, damn. That's okay.
But yeah.
Two very interesting things to note here. Not only is there way more people running these scams than I originally thought, but Jesse also seems to have stopped running them himself. But why did he choose to run these scams in the first place?
Well, I just like watching them afterwards. It's kind of funny.
Oh.
They freak out.
I suppose.
Like they've lost thousands of hours of work to being discovered.
So I know that servers like Hypixel tend to have like a pretty young player base. So like, was it pretty easy to get people to fall for this sort of stuff?
Well, it used to be like 75% of people would. Now it's like 20% will fall for it.
Yeah, I suppose now that it's gotten a bit more traction on the internet.
Yeah.
If you have a number, how many accounts would you typically get a day from this?
Oh, yeah. This sounds really depressing. I would not go to sleep till I got like about 60, 70 people.
Oh, wow.
I just do it all day because I was bored.
With an estimated success rate of around 75%, it really goes to show just how dangerous this scam was at the time. Jesse later mentioned that he sold most of the accounts he got from this scam to make a profit. But just how much money did he make?
Like, from all of the accounts that I sold, probably like 40, 50K USD.
Oh, really? And that was the last question I asked him. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe.
Alex Albon in 2025 is quietly having the best season in his F1 career. He has been so good that if the season was over today, he would undoubtedly be in my top 5 drivers of 2025 with the likes of Piastri and Verstappen. And yet, despite this, if you look at what the fans and media are saying online, absolutely no one is talking about just how good he's actually been. And now, that is not to say that Alex has been underappreciated throughout his career or that his achievements in the midfield have gone entirely unnoticed. But going into 2025, I think we all had the same thought, which is, how good would he actually look up against a race-winning and potentially even championship-caliber driver like Carlos Sainz? Given that F1 is so car-dependent, sometimes the only people that you can judge drivers against are their teammate. And in the case of Alex Albon, it was always very difficult to give him almost too much credit, because even though he produced countless incredible performances since returning with Williams in 2022, respectfully, the teammates that he has had weren't just mediocre drivers. there were some of the worst drivers on the grid in Nicholas Latifi and Logan Sargent. In fact, during the back end of 2024 when Sargent was replaced by Colapinto, although Franco was a little bit crash prone, I think a lot of us were very impressed with the speed that he showed up against Alex, and there is no doubt that in races like Singapore, Franco even had Alex a little bit rattled with his speed and aggression, which in my opinion was a good thing. When you only have weak drivers as your teammates, sometimes it's very easy to get complacent and be made to look better than you actually are. A rookie like Franco pushing Alex as much as he did definitely created skepticism over just how good Alex really was, but knowing that a winning driver like Carlos Sainz was coming into the team this season, all of those questions would finally be answered. And now I want to say right from the outset that Sainz has had a very disappointing season so far. In his own words, his raw pace has actually been pretty good, but a mixture of struggling to adapt to the car, reliability issues, too many incidents, and poor execution from both driver and team has really turned his season into a bit of a disaster. And now, Sainz's season will require its own video, but what I want to emphasize is that in praising Alex Albon, it's not about tearing down Carlos Sainz. It's simply about acknowledging how competitive Albon has been relative to a driver who we know is a multiple-time Grand Prix winner, and someone who not only performed in the pressure cooker that is Ferrari, but was also very competitive alongside Leclerc. In terms of qualifying, Albon and Sainz have been identical, having out-qualified each other 8 times so far this season, and even when it comes to their average qualifying position, they are also right next to each other in the standings, with Alex having the 10th best average of 11, and Sainz having the 11th best average of 11.81. With that in mind, if you compare that to their championship standings, I genuinely couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it. Because whilst Albon has scored 70 points so far this season, sitting atop of the midfield and even ahead of Antonelli in the Mercedes, Carlos Sainz finds himself down in 18th place, having scored just 16 points. That is actually one of the biggest differences between teammates on the entire grid, and Carlos Sainz is not a mug. He is a great driver. So far, Alex has scored over 81% of the team's total points, which under any circumstances is total and utter domination. That is the sort of contribution that Max was making against drivers like Perez and even Alex himself at Red Bull, and it emphasizes that this season, Alex's race execution has been close to flawless. He has scored points 11 times out of 16 races, and apart from a bad run of 3 consecutive DNFs, which includes 2 back-to-back engine failures in Canada and Austria, very few drivers on the grid have maximized their car as much as Alex Albon. Right from the start of the year, Williams were very clear about the fact that they were sacrificing the 2025 season by not developing the FW47 and putting virtually all of their resources and time into nailing the new generation of car in 2026. Vowles did admit that they plan to add a few bits onto the car during the first couple of races, but the FW47's wind tunnel time came to an end back in March, and since then it has been 100% about the FW48 for 26. A huge amount of credit has to go to Vowles and how he's reshaped the technical side of the team, because the fact that Alex over the last few races has finished 7th and 5th with a car that is basically almost identical to what he had in Australia shows that Williams not only created a competitive car to start the season, but also a consistent one that has stayed competitive on a variety of different tracks. Apart from the car being inherently more competitive, in terms of the feeling in the car and what it's given to Alex, he has said, "I am comfortable in the car and I feel like the car is way more predictable to drive. It is easier to drive on the limit. We are not getting these snaps and things, which I think last year you could see sometimes would put us in a wall. It builds confidence and then you can just exploit the car more and more. I think our cars have always been quite peaky, and I've always felt that my performances have been consistent since I've joined Williams. It's maybe being being highlighted now that we have a consistent car every weekend, I can do consistent performances. That is what it feels like to me. That feeling in the car of stability and predictability has been the bedrock of Albon's season. There is no doubt that last year Alex was becoming a borderline crash-prone driver, and it seemed at times that in what was clearly a very peaky car, Albon, Sargent, and even Colapinto were almost dragging each other down with how many incidents they were having. However, with Alex, the underlying performance was always there. But what has been impressive is that he's been able to improve with the car this season by completely cutting out the crashes that he had last season and now scoring more points than he has ever done before. There is no doubt that the Williams, at least in the hands of Alex, is a good car. But given how condensed the grid has been this season, on any given weekend we have seen the Racing Bulls, the Aston Martin, and even the Sauber be just as good. I really do not feel as though the car has been carrying Alex, especially when you look at how much Sainz has struggled to adapt to it. It's not a given that even if you put a Leclerc, a Russell, or Piastri in that car, that even they would be outperforming Albon. What has made Alex's season so special is that he has always improved on his qualifying performances with even better race performances, with racecraft and execution being the absolute key. And similar to how we talk about Max in the Red Bull, Alex is leaving almost nothing on the table.
Jeep Gladiator is your invitation to start doing more. Tow more, haul more, feel more. Here's to more Jeep things this year.
The one slight oddity about his season, however, that I have noticed is that he has definitely been more vocal on the radio about strategy, and multiple times he has had heated conversations with his race engineer, often being critical towards the team. And now, this can be interpreted in many ways, but I think the fact that he is delivering those results shows that perhaps with Carlos Sainz coming into the team, who is known to be one of the most cerebral drivers on the grid, I think Alex has felt almost a responsibility to also take charge and dictate the strategy when he feels it's necessary. And in that way, he has actually elevated himself this season into an even more complete driver in the car. To me this season, Alex has checked so many boxes that I just can't help but ask myself, what exactly is his ceiling and how good could he really be in a race-winning car? If we go back exactly a year ago, Carlos Sainz was winning races in a Ferrari, and at the time I said that he is a driver who, in the right car with the right teammate and under the right circumstances, is more than good enough to win a world championship, similar to how Jenson Button became champion in 2009 at Brawn. When it comes to Alex, what happened at Red Bull half a decade ago now to me is basically irrelevant. He is a completely different driver to the one he was then, and what he has shown leaves no doubt in my mind that he is a driver who is capable of being a multiple-time Grand Prix winner if given the car to do so. His future is now almost completely tied to Williams and the James Vowles project, but a small part of me really hopes that if circumstances fall into place, that he would also be an option for the front-running teams. In my mind, no one in the midfield deserves a chance to drive a race-winning car more than Albon, given everything that he has proved since returning to Formula 1. Given how competitive he has looked alongside Sainz, who we know is a top driver, he would be more than deserving of a race seat at McLaren, Mercedes, or Ferrari. Although from there, all we can do is speculate as to how good he'd actually be, and if he could handle the relentless pressure of driving for those top teams. I do not see why he couldn't be a multiple-time Grand Prix winner. Since coming back into Formula 1 and now going on to outperform drivers like Sainz in the same car, not only has Alex rebuilt his reputation, but he has risen to every single challenge that the team has thrown at him. And now, I am not saying that Alex is good enough or will ever even be in the position to challenge for a title, because, drivers like Russell and Leclerc are still waiting for their chance. But what I do think is that it will be a great shame if we never see Albon in a race-winning car again in Formula 1, because more than anyone else, I think that he is good enough to rise once again and get into that conversation with some of the best drivers in Formula 1. Well, there you have it. If you did enjoy this video and want to support the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. That would be massively appreciated, and I'll see you in the next one.
Please do not show this video to anyone or I could get in trouble. I recently met Louis, who's the CEO of Sargento, but here's why I need you to keep this video a secret.
I'm going to share with you my very, very special grilled cheese sandwich recipe, but you have to promise me, Tyler, you're not going to share it with anybody you don't trust.
Deal.
The first step is to butter your bread and then sprinkle some Sargento shredded Parmesan on top.
Louis and I both agreed that our favorite part of making grilled cheese is that you can use any variety of Sargento's high-quality cheese to experiment with delicious flavors. In this sandwich, Louis used Sargento.
Getting completely manhandled by your rookie teammate, more spins than there are letters in the alphabet, and some very questionable antics off track. Nikita Mazepin was one of a kind. And I am really glad that's the case, because this man was not only a ray of sunshine to be around, but he also gave us the greatest, worst rookie season in Formula 1 history. But you must be thinking, hey, Mr. Daily Fuel Up, if he was so bad, how did he even make it to Formula 1? Oh boy, do I have a story for you. The European F3 high-tech team raised eyebrows when they seemingly anointed Nikita Mazepin as the next big thing after just a few tests. Unsurprisingly, his father Dmitry Mazepin came through with a hefty sponsorship deal that secured his son's spot on the team for the 2016 season, only for the man to finish dead last in the championship. But hey, they say the second season is where you shine. Nikita did show some improvement with 3 podiums in Belgium and Austria, but by the end of the season, he still only managed a lackluster 10th place. Despite his lackluster performance, everyone loves a comeback story, and Nikita would stage one in the GP3 series. He finished second overall and secured the top step of the podium 4 times that season. However, his foray into F2 in 2019 was nothing short of disastrous, with an 18th place finish in the championship, while his teammate Nick de Vries claimed the championship trophy. Desperate for redemption, Nikita joined High-Tech for another shot at F2 glory. After some ups and downs, he finally had his breakthrough moment in Hungary, securing his first podium in F2. Silverstone saw him go even further, clinching his first win. However, Spa brought chaos with penalties, conflicts, and more podium finishes. In the end, Nikita finished the season in 5th place, an improvement, but hardly enough to win over legions of fans. Nevertheless, in 2021, he inexplicably found himself in a Haas seat, with financial backing from Ural Kali and Dmitry Mazepin playing a pivotal role in securing his place on the grid. Now, all that Mazepin had to do after signing that contract with Haas was to make it to the first race day without doing something stupid. No points for guessing what he did. The man sexually assaulted an Instagram influencer and almost lost his seat before he'd even sat in it. Eventually, though, he would make it to the Bahrain Grand Prix, his first big shot at making an impression. And guess what? He crashed. His first race lasted all of 30 seconds when he turned his car into a metal pancake on the 3rd corner. And so Mazepin was born. Unfortunately for Haas. You will definitely have seen Günther Steiner, the Haas team principal, on Netflix's Drive to Survive, and you'll know he doesn't exactly mince his words. The show's 4th season in particular showcased Steiner in all his glory, capturing moments like Mazepin's spin at his debut F1 race, with Steiner's frank comment,
"That's what people hate you."
but hey, at least we were loving it. Moving on to the Portuguese Grand Prix, where he decided to play the ultimate game of block the Red Bull with Sergio Perez. Perez wasn't impressed, to say the least. And then in Azerbaijan, he finally managed a lead lap finish, a career best 14th. It was like the universe threw him a bone. Of course, it couldn't all be sunshine and rainbows. His teammate Mick Schumacher tried to overtake him, and Mazepin pulled a stunt that, well, see for yourself. months, Mazepin was racking up experiences at the back of the pack, scarcely breaking into the top 15. His shining moment, he was swimming along in 14th place at the Hungaroring, but even in that race, he couldn't resist a happy misadventure into the Aramco wilderness. At this point, the man was breaking barriers in all the wrong senses of the word. His plight certainly wasn't helped by Haas's sorry excuse for a car either. Then came the Belgian Grand Prix, where rain poured like cats and dogs. Only one official lap happened under the safety car, but in
It was August 2021, and a player by the name of Specially logged onto Hypixel, only to realize that he could no longer look behind him. The removal of Freelook was without a doubt one of the most controversial Lunar Client updates in history, and Specially, among countless other players, didn't agree with the update. Like many other Bed Wars players at the time, he just couldn't live without it. So, he got to work. He began tediously sifting through all of the game files from the updated build of Lunar Client. The idea was that if he was able to pinpoint the exact file that disabled Freelook, he could simply remove it and replace it with the same file from an older build of Lunar Client, theoretically tricking his game into bringing back the Freelook mod and allowing him to use it again. It took him over a day of searching, but he finally found it. Specially quickly replaced the file, opened up his game, and clicked the mod menu, and sure enough, Freelook was back. Shortly after, he would share his discovery and upload a tutorial to his YouTube channel titled How to Get Freelook on Lunar Client. This tutorial would not only get flooded with comments of gratitude and support, but it would also gain over 40,000 views, one of them being from someone named Sios, a fellow Bed Wars player and programmer who would eventually reach out especially on Discord with a game-changing message. You see, while this tutorial was insanely good news for the community, it wasn't by any means a perfect solution to the problem, and it actually contained its fair share of downsides. At the time, the only way to get Freelook back was to be running the game with files from an older version of Lunar Client, meaning that if players still wanted to use Freelook, they would have to sacrifice receiving any potential updates or new mods Lunar might add in the future. Or so we thought, because little did everybody know that Sios had a breakthrough. He claimed to have found a way to edit Lunar Client's code and seamlessly bring back Freelook while simultaneously keeping all of its updated features. The reason he reached out especially is because Sios wanted this to become a project that the two of them worked on together. Specially agreed to join, they got to work, and just a month later, the two of them would become the founders of Solar Tweaks.
Let's go now, 15, faster now. Faster.
What initially started as a simple mod fix had evolved into a fully fledged Minecraft client built upon the foundation of Lunar Client and adding a bunch of highly requested features from the community. As you would expect, the client itself looked pretty much exactly like Lunar Client, just with a few minor differences. Even the branding looked almost exactly the same, and the two logos resembling the same shape, except Solar's contained the sunrise instead of the standard Lunar Client moon. Things were rocky at first, with different reported bugs popping up left and right, yet despite these initial problems, the demand for the client continued to rise. Every video that Specially uploaded showcasing Solar Tweaks gained substantial viewership. As time progressed, Specially and Sios remained dedicated to improving the Solar Tweaks client, continuously adding features such as custom themes, commands, and even the ability to access every single Lunar Client cosmetic and emote on the store for completely free. However, their biggest and smartest move yet arrived when they decided to add support for cracked Minecraft accounts. This feature meant that players no longer even needed to own an official Minecraft account to use the client. And considering Minecraft's status as one of the most pirated games in history, with tens of millions of players using cracked Minecraft accounts to play every single day, this move opened the client up to a massive new audience, and it was after this change where word of Solar began to spread like wildfire throughout the Minecraft community, being infamously known as the cracked Lunar Client, and by the end of 2021, Solar Tweaks had tens of thousands of active users. However, this would also prove to be a major turning point for the client, as it was around the same time when Psyche, one of the owners of Lunar Client, reached out to Specially and Sios on Discord. In a series of messages, Psyche expressed his disapproval of Solar Tweaks and ordered the two of them to stop development and shut down the client, even threatening them with legal action if they they didn't comply. The exact reasons behind Psyche's reaction remained unclear, but it's assumed that it was because SolarTweaks had used and modified Lunar Client's code without permission, something that is very openly against Lunar's terms of service. Another theory is that the client may have been inadvertently impacting Lunar Client's profits. Even though SolarTweaks was completely free to download and neither of its original founders had profited a single dollar from it, one of the main features of the client was that it offered unlimited access to every cosmetic on the Lunar Client store, which would theoretically render the purchase of real Lunar cosmetics, which are individually priced between $5 to $15, completely useless. The two of them responded to Psyche by trying to negotiate and reach a compromise. Perhaps if they changed a bit of the branding or removed a certain feature, that SolarTweaks would be able to continue running. However, Psyche remained stubborn and didn't budge. With the threat of all their hard work and the massive community they had built all of a sudden being forced to shut down, Specially and Sios were left with a difficult decision to make, but eventually they made one. After carefully thinking about it, they decided to just ignore him. Yeah, rather than agree to shut down SolarTweaks like Psyche had asked them to do, they literally just stopped responding to him and continued developing Solar. In the coming months, they would even double down on using Lunar Client's code and release SolarTweaks Build 4.0, which, among many other additions, included a brand new custom launcher that once again looked extremely similar to Lunar Client. At this point, it seemed as though Psyche had completely given up on contacting them. Meanwhile, SolarTweaks started to gain significant traction on YouTube. Smaller content creators within the cracked Minecraft community began to make videos showcasing the client to their audience, with some of them gaining up to 100,000 views each. Going into the current year, the hype behind SolarTweaks became unstoppable. Update after update released, each one was met with tons of new features and thousands of people ready to download them. However, just as it seemed like everything was falling into place, Psyche had returned. However, this time, it wasn't in the form of a Discord message, but rather a legal document. And on May 5th, 2023, the official SolarTweaks GitHub page would release an unexpected announcement. In this post, they revealed that because of their decision to ignore Psyche's original message and kept